I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone. I'm doing fine. So leave me alone, so leave me alone, so leave me alone, leave me alone.
All right, Terry Holloman, weird episode tonight because you can't see me. For whatever reason, my camera is being all weird, but we can do this. We've done this before. We've done shows together without seeing one another.
We've done worse.
And honestly, we're spoiled. Maybe we're spoiled now with all this technology that we always have to see each other's faces.
I know, right? Let's just pretend this is a real quarantine, like we're at a real radio station and we don't get a chance to see each other. We have to work from our separate workspaces. So
exactly
what it is.
Let's talk about a couple of things today. The first, I kind of wanted to try to connect these two, right? I sent you a story earlier. Well, the first story you commented on was Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks quarterback, may actually really want to leave and has okayed for trades for 4 different teams. But we'll get to that. The first thing I want to talk about is that Mr. Potato Head, if you don't remember who Mr. Potato Head is, then you probably are older than what? How old? Or younger than 21? Yeah. It's not a new toy. It's even as a kid, I was really bored with it. It was this plastic potato that you got and that you put different body parts into, like eyes, mustache, arms, legs, and then the game was kind of over.
Right.
But his name was Mr. Potato Head. And now, because corporate responses to social issues are hysterical, Mr. Potato Head is going to be gender neutral, which is interesting to me because I never remember hooking in to Mr. Potato Head a penis.
They didn't get that. We didn't get that special edition, Mr.
Didn't
Potato
get that. Yeah. He did have a mustache, but I've dated an Italian girl, and so have they. Yeah. Well, it's just true, too. This is the kind of, and then, of course, there's outrage, like, oh, how could you change like Mr. Potato Head is just part of our Constitution. Like, how could you possibly ruin this American icon?
Right.
But both sides are so, like, this is such to me, both the idea to make if you're a parent who is really interested in gender issues, right? Like, and the fluidity of gender, you're probably not fucking buying like these old timey toys anyway, right? They're not showing up in your house.
No. You probably have some kind of virtual AI simulation machine that your child plays with on a regular basis.
Something educational.
Yeah.
There's nothing educational about Mr. Potato Head whatsoever. His name is was Mr. Potato Head.
Now it's just Potato Head?
Now it's just Potato Head, which for some reason sounds crazy to me. Like Mr. Potato Head, maybe just because I grew up with it, sounded like, oh yeah, Mr. Potato Head. That's what you played with.
Yeah.
But Potato Head just sounds lunatic. Like lunacy.
I mean, first and foremost, there's a number of things we need to unpack here.
Yeah.
First and foremost, let's let it out that Mr. Potato Head was a potato. I'm pretty sure the original, the beta version of Mr. Potato Head was an actual real Idaho spud that they stuck things into. That was the original Potato Head. It was the potato. Okay, so that's first and foremost. Second of all, Mr. Potato Head came out. It was pretty, even though they called it Mr. Potato Head, there was nothing to, signify that it had male parts. You just assumed it was because his name was Mr. And he had a mustache from time to time, just like you said. But
if you wanted to put the mustache on, the mustache was optional.
Exactly, you had your options on what you wanted to put on Mr. Potato Head. If he didn't have eyes, he just didn't have eyes. There was nobody that didn't have eyes that wasn't offended that Mr. Potato Head didn't have eyes. So that's second thing. Third thing is there is a Mrs. Potato Head. There's a Miss Potato Head. I remember them having a male and a female version of it. And I thought that should have been good enough. So as progressive and as liberal as I like to think I am at times, Zach, I think that this is just being totally irrational and over the top with an old-fashioned toy that children that are of the age that could be and should be playing with a potato head doll figurine shouldn't care. You shouldn't care whether your potato head is male, female, or gender neutral. It should not matter to you. That's like the last thing on my mind when I'm 5 years old, is if my Mr. Potato Head is anatomically correct or if it's not. It's literally the last thing on my mind when I'm 5 years old.
There's tons of legitimate debate about trans issues regarding young children. How young is it to give them hormonal treatments and everything? But let's keep in mind, this thing is a fucking potato. So no matter what gender it is, it's a vegetable. It is a vegetable. But that being said, I just find it silly. Whereas, you see reactions to it that are like, well, this is just the downfall of America. One thing, the downfall of America is that we ever had a toy called Mr. Potato Head. And like it's a step above Pet Rock in terms of shit toys.
I mean, but whoever invented it, though, you have to imagine that dude.
Brilliant.
Oh my God.
Brilliant.
Millions and millions and millions, maybe billions of dollars generated from a freaking potato.
It's a very, like, everyone knows who formerly Mr. Potato Head was, without a doubt. It's a very, very famous name, but nobody ever looked. And they're following the lead of other toy companies, like there's a Barbie, who I love their response to. Barbie looked the same forever. And Barbie was always just kind of like a stupid bimbo for a while. And then all of a sudden, within like a year's time, they're like, all the Barbies are black now and she's a doctor. That's it. Like it's this reactionary thing. I just love corporate responses to legitimate issues. Like there certainly are kids struggling with gender, how they feel as a person. But imagine if one of them is at all adversely affected by Mr. Potato Head. That is a failure of any sort of society, and at a lesser level, it is a failure of your parenting. Because one, you bought them Mr. Potato Head, which has been on nobody's Christmas list for 25 years, ever since Nintendo was invented.
I was really literally just about to say this to you, Zach, I'm a father of 4 kids. My youngest son, or my only son, just turned 9 years old. If I ever gave him a potato head, and I'm not even saying Mr. or Mrs., I'm keeping it gender neutral. If I gave him either or, if I gave him all of the potato heads in the world, he would look at me like I was crazy. My oldest daughter is 19 years old. If I ever gave her a potato head anywhere along the lines from her birth until now, she would think I was cuckoo. She would open it up and look at me like, what the hell am I supposed to do with this, whatever it is? It's crazy.
I tweeted this earlier, Terry. We've spoken now about my weird early years, my formative years, when I was a tap dancer, and all my friends were tap dancers. All my friends were girls, and I had this weird feeling of being an outcast because I had to hang out with them because they all had Barbie dolls. And then, so I got a Ken doll, and I tweeted a picture of the Ken doll that I had. Yes. And back then, like there was no more gender neutral a doll that you could possibly get. Actually, all the action figures were gender neutral because they might present male, but then as everybody did within the third day of having one of those dolls or action figures, whatever you want to call them, you take the pants off and it's just smooth plastic.
Smooth plastic, baby. I mean,
so gender mattered. Exactly. Everybody was Hedwig. And then also my Ken doll was wearing a sleeveless vest with sparkles on it. with a purple tie. So he also presented like feminine.
Straddling the fence.
Exactly.
He was straddling the fence.
Yeah. So, and there weren't any lessons to be learned by that. It's just that when you reach between the legs of your action figures, there should be nothing.
Nothing.
And if you, and Mr. Potato Head, sorry, Jesus, Potato Head.
So, Zach, just to be clear, because I'm not really 100% sure. I mean, where we are on this, I'm gonna have to go do more research when we're done. Is like the term Mr. Potato Head done then?
Done.
Like,
it's just Potato Head now.
It's like literally like if you say Mr. Potato Head, that's gonna be offensive to someone. Like
no, it's the corporations thinking that it would be offensive. It's them. It's like them getting ahead of an issue because there is, Mr. obviously has a male presenting, attachment to it. Yeah. And so they think that this is going to be an issue. You know what it is too? And this is why we're all suckers.
Stupid.
It's a fucking PR stunt because no one's thought about Mr. Potato Head and now Potato Head and forever. So they're like, yeah, let's have this non-binary, this NB action like Mr. Potato Head. Let's call her Z by their right name. No one's thought about them in forever, and they're not an action figure. You like the thing is like you would pluck the eyes in, put the ears in. It's funny that it was like people think that it was meant to inspire creativity, as if like if you put the eyes in the ear sockets and the ears in the eye sockets, somehow that would be fun. Like everybody made it. 99% of the people made it the same way,
right?
And then after you put it together, there was nothing to be done with it. There was no evil. There was no villain. Yeah. There was nothing to fight Potato Head against. It was just like you put it together and it was over. Yeah, it wasn't. Yeah.
No, yeah. It's just. I mean, this is just another example. And again, I go back to the thing that I said earlier. As liberal and progressive as I tend to think I am about a lot of things, I just think something like this does more harm than good because there are real issues out there. And I think that sometimes, when you talk about representation, there was a long time when representation was an issue. And you alluded to it earlier when you talked about the Barbie dolls. For a long time, there was only one type of Barbie doll, right?
Yeah.
Long, skinny, disproportionately figured blonde Barbie. And then, a lot of kids of color, a lot of girls of color kind of got a negative body image or a negative self-image because there was nobody that represented them as far as Barbie. And that, Barbie was, the epitome of beauty for young girls and they had nothing to aspire to. So they did what they had to do. They brought in Barbies of different, races and ethnicities and sizes and whatnot. That's fine. And sometimes you can take it too far, but I think it was good for them to have representation. But we're talking about a potato.
Yes.
A potato that doesn't represent anything but a potato that you can make faces out of.
But you and I both just see it as silly, and it is silly. But then, you watch reactions to it where it's like, oh my God, this is just the next example of America ruining itself. And I'm never buying a Potato Head again. And I don't know how many Potato Heads sold last year, but I can't imagine anybody was thrilled to get one unless you have unless your kid has a weird potato kink.
The hot Christmas present of 2020 Potato Head.
Never wasn't.
Like, no.
Yeah.
I don't care what you do to the Potato Head at this point in the game. You could put in a Wi-Fi transmitter with like that made it talk like Amazon Alexa and answered questions, and nobody's buying Potato Heads like that, man. I promise.
Dude, ask any even 6-year-old, which is the last time I think I touched a Potato Head, and ask them if they'd rather have this or straight up $10 cash. And they'll all say the latter.
I'll take the $10 cash.
Let's turn this into a little bit more of maybe a serious conversation. You brought up Barbie, and it wasn't that I thought Barbie shouldn't have less representation. It was just like, all right, corporations overreact. because they're like, oh, we've been doing this for so long. Now Barbie is like everything that it wasn't before. So now all Barbies are all the representation that we never had before. And then I think that that's sort of silly, but really predictably corporate. But there's been a couple of other, major iconic changes that have happened in the past year. One is Aunt Jemima, the pancake syrup, and the other two is Uncle Ben's. And that's a little bit more because they're actual, representations of human beings. I'd be kind of curious to hear your thoughts on those, with Aunt Jemima, who even at 11, I was like, oh shit. Like this is
You had to turn the bottle around while you eat breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't want you looking at me as I guilt. No, man. I mean, I have. It's weird, and just being completely transparent and open about it. I have mixed feelings about it for a couple of reasons. I think the original imaging of Aunt Jemima and what Aunt Jemima represented in the beginning was pretty offensive. Like it was like an old mammy, like the old black nanny that took, cooked in the kitchen and took care of the kids and, represented the, a really terrible time in our country, right? That's what the original Aunt Jemima was. Now, I know that it has changed its image over the years. I mean, due to probably a lot of backlash and just cleaning up the image and really just coming into the 20th and the 21st century, really becoming something different. But it still harkens back to the original image and what it was supposed to be all about. But so that's on one side of the Aunt Jemima argument. On the flip side of it, what are we really trying to accomplish by changing the imagery or changing the name? Does that, help our cause as Black people anymore? That we don't have the name Aunt Jemima, that we don't see that on pancake syrup bottles anymore? Is that going to erase that history? Maybe it'll erase some feelings that people have, but I mean, does it give reparations to people who may have feel insulted by the name? So I'm kind of on the fence by it. I'm glad it didn't have the imagery that we used to have with the lady with the, shabby clothes on and the bandana around her head.
She was the help. Like she was
hired help.
Yeah.
Not even hired. She's the forced help.
Forced help. Yeah. She would rather not be there.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually, Terry, that you bring up reparations because Bruce Springsteen started, and it's not my favorite Springsteen title, but it's not my favorite venture of his because now he entered an already crowded podcast arena, and he started one called Renegades: Born in America or Born in the USA. And his first guest was Barack Obama.
You don't say.
Yeah. I mean, that's a hell of a duo. And seeing the pictures of the two of them, it's just like, man, I can't imagine being in that room. Yeah. But one of the topics that came up was reparations. And Obama said it's an absolutely justified position to take because so much of this country was built on the backs of Black slaves, which is undeniable. And I don't think that you and I have ever really talked reparations. It's interesting to me, Terry. Like I've been really surprised by the people that I've talked to that you wouldn't expect to support an idea like reparations, which gets so complicated. Who gets it? Whatever. But like I've heard more conservatives being like, yeah, push forward with it than I have heard progressives. Not that progressives don't believe in it. They just see it as this hypothetical that's not even worth pursuing because how the hell are we ever going to get it done?
Right. And I think a lot of people take that stance, like how in the world do you get it done? And I too sometimes have thought about it. On one hand, like, where do we draw the line and what constitutes someone who was a descendant of a slave or what, and how do we determine that? That being said, like you said, we've never had that discussion, and it can get very, very deep, especially with me, because I feel strongly that reparations are due. And a lot of people don't understand and really fully, say, oh, I never owned slaves. Why do we have to have this discussion? Nobody in my family owns slaves. Okay, that's fine and dandy. But we as a country, we enjoy the benefits of slave labor. And people don't understand this. That was free labor that built this country. Like, if you had a company today, if we had an industry today, just our tech industry, and everybody that worked in tech didn't have to get paid, you know how much that would benefit our entire country? I don't care what you did. I don't care what your job was in America. If we had an entire industry that did not have to pay the people one dime, everybody would benefit from that. So, and we would benefit for generations and generations and generations and generations.
And
so,
it was every industry at that point. Really, because agriculture was the backbone of everything, and slaves, obviously, there's no agriculture without slavery. But would Obama get reparations?
That's the thing. So yeah, well, his probably not, because his family is the black side of his family from Nigeria, right? Or Kenya. See, I was about to do a whole Donald Trump birther thing right now. No, I don't know where them black people are from. But no, so yeah, I don't know if he would. I don't think he would, since he can't trace his ancestral tree to slavery. And that's the other issue with reparations, and that's how messed up we are as African Americans, is that a lot of us can only trace our lineage to a certain level. Like, at some point in the 1800s, that's as far as a lot of us can go, because they put records on us. I heard it's crazy. Think how crazy this is. And I don't want to get too deep into it, but this is how the plight of a lot of Black Americans, even to this day. So we all know Beyonce, right? We know, everybody in the world knows Beyonce. It's like, how do you come up with a name like Beyonce? Okay, her mother's mother, born in the Deep South, the last name was like Beyonce, something like that, without a Beyonce on the end of it, right? And they wrote the wrong name on the birth certificate, and they went to go. They told them that's not how our last name is spelled, and the people told them, "You better be glad you got a birth certificate. Get out." And so the name was spelled like that from that point on. My last name is Holloman, M-O-N, and the actual last name is Man, M-A-N, from back before time, as the people that used to own my family. And the name was misspelled, and that separated the Black family from the white Holloman. So my name is different. So how do I trace that back?
Shit, I didn't know that you had slave ancestors.
Bro, I'm Black in America. That's how we got here. Unless you were a night, like you came of, like, if you go back past 1800s and your family tree is in America and you're Black, you have slave roots.
That's the thing, because you remember, I feel like it happens less now. People were upset by those who call themselves African Americans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, why aren't they just Americans? And I'm Ukrainian, right? I can trace my roots back to 1740, whatever. Back to, and then that's amazing. Like, my Ukrainian ancestry, which I do grapple with a lot. I mean, I'm proud of it sometimes. I'm discouraged by it sometimes, but at least I have it, right? So I've this Ukrainian, I can trace where my family immigrated, right?
Mm-hmm.
And African Americans can't, and that's why it's like they have to identify as that. Like, I would hate as much as my relationship with Ukraine is very complicated. I'm thrilled to have it, and it would be really upsetting to me if I didn't. And so I hope people fully grasp that. Like when you're like, oh, why aren't they just Americans? Well, they were brought here and they don't know where from, but they know what continent they were brought here from. So that's as specific as they can be with their ancestral roots.
A whole continent. And I think a lot of people in America get that confused a lot. It'd be like, oh, Africa. I'm like, wait, okay, yeah, you come from Africa. Well, right, what part of Africa? Do you know how many countries there are in Africa? That's like saying I come from North America. Like, where in North America? Is it Canada, United States, Mexico? Where are you from in North America? So
yeah, there's only 4 here. There's 55, 57 in Africa. So
yeah,
there's a lot more. It gets a lot more complicated.
And I want to take you all through this though. Think about this, Zach. Look, those who aren't looking at us right now, you're listening to it on a podcast. Go to my Twitter or find me on some kind of social media and look
Terry
at
Holloman.
Holloman, M-O-N.
Okay. M-O-N.
I'm not the A's. But and some of my family is still A's. Some people that I'm directly related to, like first cousins, are Mans, M-A-N.
Seriously.
Isn't that crazy? Yep. First cousins. But anyways, as I digress, look at my face. And when you see me, you know that I am 100% black. You think nothing else. You see a black person. A few years ago, I did the ancestry DNA test. I'm like 10% of my bloodline is from like Finland, Norway. How did that happen? There's nobody in my family that I know. None of my aunts or uncles or grandmas or grandpas, my great grandma, great grandpa. I know all of them. I don't know anybody white in my tree. There's nobody white that I know. How did I get my 10%?
Somebody's keeping secrets. Somebody's not admitting to something.
You know what I'm saying?
Or,
my dad and mom are as black as me.
I take another one. I feel like I haven't taken one of those. It was like Ancestry.com or 23andMe. Is that what you took?
I took Ancestry.com.
Ancestry.com. I feel like they just throw in some shit just to be like, yeah, and this is what makes you interesting. Like if I did one, it would be like 99% whatever, and they'd be like 1% Mongolian, and I'd be like, fuck.
Let me dig in.
What would happen there?
You're at home, like cooking up Chinese food, like my family used to eat.
Right?
I knew I loved General shows for some reason.
And now I can just do Mongolian things without just, like taking over their culture. It's just like, no, you don't understand. I'm 1% Mongolian.
Yeah, I'm 1%.
Yeah. Like I would love to start one of those companies and then always assign at least 8%. And it would be primarily for white people. And I know how to advertise that. Like just put ads in USA Today and on the Hallmark Channel. And then everyone gets 7% of indigenous something. It would just be the self-satisfied DNA test where it'd be like, oh, thank God.
Oh my God, I'm a minority. Holy
believe
shit.
Me. I haven't called Columbus Day in forever. And I always knew why it upset me.
It's because I
really know.
I got the message from my ancestors. The spirit realm has been talking to me. For me, here's my thing now. I mean, can I claim to be white? Can I join the white crew? Like, cause I'm like, I have a percent. I can show my DNA test.
Dude, go ahead. It's not gonna work.
Come on, man. Listen, I need my credit. Add me like 50 points on my credit score right now.
Yeah.
I want to be approved for all these loans that I got in mind. I got some great things I want to do, man.
Dude, the best shot you have is to keep doing the show with me if you want to be white. I mean, you can claim white all you want. You can be Terrence Holloman.
That's my real name, by the way.
I know it is. Yeah, and that is a great, because that's the thing too. You remember when Obama first ran? They're like, people were like, "Well, he's half white too," and I'm like, "Well, my first job, I was told to follow half white people around the store, if you know what I mean." Like, so don't give me that half white bullshit.
Keep your eye on the half white.
The half white. Mm-hmm.
Oh my goodness. Give them half reparations.
Yeah. So we view, like, let's just say, because we're all just struggling for a second stimulus check, right?
Yeah, we're waiting on that thing.
Would reparations, in your mind, because President Obama didn't get into specifics about it, and he explained why he didn't bring it up during his administration, and it makes total sense. Like, he's not going to be the first black president who's just like, oh, okay, reparations, I'm fucking hip-hopping the shit out of the Star-Spangled Banner. Like, he knew, like, okay, I want there to be a second black president. So,
yes.
But is cash even the best answer, or is it, I don't think that it is, right? That just seems like almost a bribe, or
it is, but it isn't. I mean, what do we do, Zach? What would anybody think would be a fair situation for everything that happened? And so again, just to I don't want to belabor this, but I think everybody should really understand this, because I hear it all the time. Like, it was so long ago, it was in the past. I didn't own slaves. Nobody that lives today was ever a slave. Okay, great. But you don't understand, things don't happen in a vacuum. It doesn't, it wasn't just the fact that there were slaves for all those generations and generations and generations. A mother has a child, their child is now a slave, and that kid grows up, and now he's a slave, and now his kids become slaves, and generation after generation. So then those people were freed with nothing. They were given the promise of 40 acres and a mule. We're going to pay you back for the generations of slavery. We're going to give you 40 acres and a mule to get started.
Which didn't happen. No, they didn't. And by the way, just to pause you on that, people who are like, oh, it happened so long ago, are the same people who are like, well, let's also preserve other history that's happened. Like, it's you can't really have it both ways, where there's this genius that happened a long time ago, but then we also have to disregard things that happened a long time ago. Like, either everything is relevant or nothing is relevant.
Exactly.
And
by the way, it doesn't. And when we talk about so long ago, where I was going with that is, it didn't just end with slavery, and it didn't just end with being free and then given 40 acres and a mule. There were also the Jim Crow laws that came into effect right after slavery. The vagrancy laws that said, black people couldn't, be out after dark, or else we could throw you in jail. And once you're in jail, guess what? You're a slave again. And then there was, the issue of separate but not equal, and people were redlined into districts where black people could only live in certain areas, and that was real life. That was in my parents' generation. That was in our generation. They still redline neighborhoods in America, and so I mean, it's to say that's distant history. That's in our lifetime.
I remember I had the chance to meet the great Patrice O'Neill, who is a black comedian who died too young.
Yeah.
And
I watched him this morning, oddly enough, but go ahead. It was crazy. I watched him this morning. He's
hysterical. But remember, he was on a show I was doing in New York. And he's like, if you see a black guy with gray hair, he drank from a separate water fountain. And I was like, holy shit. That's true. That is living history. That is crazy. And by the way, if reparations come forward, the one thing I would fully invest in is all those DNA kits they were just talking about. Because I know I'd be like,
have some black.
Give me 4% Nigeria, please, man. Something. Have one great grandmother have an indiscretion with a black.
That's dead ass. But so check this out. And again, just before we leave it alone, I just gotta. because it's something I think about. I've thought about a lot over the years. Put a lot of a lot of brain power into it. I mean, if we look at all the marginalized communities that we think of in this country, and really kind of even outside of the country a little bit, and we think of the atrocities that took place with those groups, almost every one of them has had a form of reparation. Almost every one. From the Native Americans, and that's a whole nother discussion, because whether that was, they did get the short end of the stick, but they got a little of the stick. So Japanese internment camps, I mean, you name it, everybody who's ever been done wrong has had some form of reparation, and we're just the ones that are left hanging.
Yeah, that's very true.
But it's cool though. I mean,
I can't. Biden's not gonna be the one that brings it forward.
There's
it was Springsteen and Obama talking about it in such a hypothetical way that
probably smoke some weed.
Yeah,
hey, bro. So sorry for your people, man.
Yeah,
Reparations, bro.
Let's wrap this up by talking about something that we talked about a little while ago. Russell Wilson, Seattle Seahawks quarterback. I think I brought it up like 3 weeks ago. There were some trade rumors because he was upset about being sacked more than any other quarterback since he entered the league. And I don't even want to approach this from like necessarily a sports angle, but I want to approach it from, he is not only the face of Seattle, but he's the face of a city, right? And what sort of detriment do you think it would be if he left the city? Like there's very few athletes, because I'm since you said that, like going back to 2014, the first time that I covered the Seahawks, I'm trying to think of a more influential Seattle figure, and there certainly is one. And it would be a huge loss for an entire city for him to leave. And now it seems like it may actually happen. And I'm kind of curious what you think about that, because I have some kind of strong thoughts from a sports standpoint, but you're still there in the city of Seattle, and I actually feel like it would sort of hurt morale, because Seattle is a place of very nefarious people. Like no one is all good, all bad.
Right.
And as much as I attacked Russell in the past for, I thought he's just kind of a fake person, he's a genuinely fine man. Yeah. And it would really hurt the city's morale to lose someone like that. And do you think a sports team like Seattle would ever take that aspect of it into consideration?
It's crazy that you say that, because I was actually, arguing with people online. I wasn't really arguing with them. I was just going back and forth with them about that very subject, man. And then you look at Russell Wilson outside of the fact that he's the greatest quarterback in Seattle's franchise history. You just look at, okay, if we got rid of Russell, he left Seattle, who's the next biggest sports star? Who's the next biggest football star on that team that anybody would have to look to represent the franchise? And I was scratching my head, and people were like, DK Metcalf. Okay, DK Metcalf is a second-year receiver right now, who's an incredible talent, but unquestionable. But he's not the face of the franchise. He's on top of that, he's going to need somebody to throw him the football. So who else is it going to be? Like who, from a purely marketing standpoint? And I think that's what a lot of people are failing to miss here in Seattle, because people are like, yeah, good riddance if he goes. He's taking up too much cap space. He wants too much money and this and that and the third. Well, listen to, maybe you guys have forgotten the history of the Seahawks and what they used to be like in the 80s and in the early 90s, where nobody cared. Nobody in the country cared about the Seattle Seahawks. And Russell Wilson, like it, love it, hate it, leave it, whatever you want to do, he brings a lot of attention to the city of Seattle. If we don't have a Russell Wilson, who's going to want to watch Monday night football games with the Seattle Seahawks versus the Arizona Cardinals, or Sunday night, or any primetime game? Because he just brings the name, the recognition, and all of that to the game. So I just think it's short-sightedness. I think Russell right now, the whole thing is a lot of conversation to build up a lot of hype while there's no football going on. That's what people do every offseason. They start talking about stuff that possibly can't happen, won't happen. For them to trade Russell Wilson would be, I don't even know what you would get in return.
From a football standpoint, I almost understand it. Like, I'm not even like, you could get rid of him and probably still make the playoffs next year. Like, I envisioned a trade in my crazy head today where it's like Tua comes back from Miami and, we're fine because Pete Carroll runs the ball anyway. But the more I'm concerned about is like, Seattle is such a soulless place. And he brings an unquestionable degree of goodness to it. And to lose that would be a lot more, because Seattle stunk last half of the year. They're not going to win the Super Bowl ever again with Russell Wilson as quarterback. I'm pretty sure of that.
Whoa, that's pretty deep, man.
I'm 100% because he doesn't match with Pete Carroll's game plan. But he
did at some point, obviously, though. They won.
He did because he had a top 5 all-time defense.
That's true, but then they came back next year too and did the same thing. I mean,
and why did they lose? Because he didn't match with Pete Carroll's game plan. But the importance of Russell Wilson, and again, in the past, because I thought it was funny, I trashed him for being this empty vessel of a person, and I don't really think that. It was just funny to say because he does a lot of ridiculous things and he doesn't always seem genuine. It's just because he's awkward and weird, but he's amazingly kind. And I think that Seattle to lose someone like that, or any city to lose someone like that, is something weirdly in this instance I feel like the organization should take into account. Like there is an importance to him beyond his performance on the football field. If you lose Russell Wilson in Seattle, how many just thoroughly good people are left in that city? How many people that are like, I know that he's maybe controversial right now, but he's not. Like beyond him, there's nobody else that every adult is always like, it's amazing the different groups of people that I would see wear Russell Wilson jerseys and support Russell Wilson.
I have a Russell Wilson jersey. And he's like, me and him are like, I don't want to say we're polar opposites, but he's a guy, at the end of the day, you said we made fun of Russell Wilson because of how corny and geeky and all that stuff. He's our corny, geeky guy. He's our corny, geeky, good guy, right? And he's the guy that what you expect to hear from at the end of every game. Good, bad, whether they won, lost, tied, got blown out, blew somebody else out. He's going to give you the same energy every time. And I think maybe we, you get used to that. And sometimes you take it for granted. And I think a lot of Seattle fans have taken it for granted for the last 8 years, 9 years, how long he's been here, 8 years, taking that for granted. Because, think about the quarterbacks that we've had here in the past. And we've had some okay quarterbacks, but nobody was just really totally drawn in or bought in to Hasselbeck like that. Nobody was
seriously, Hasselbeck was a default star. He stunk. Brock Heward, who barely played, is still more famous in the region than Hasselbeck is. Wilson didn't have a large mountain to climb to become the best Seahawks quarterback ever.
They had a couple.
Some decent ones.
There's no Staubach and no Joe Montana or nothing like that. But
no.
You're right. But and still, he's done an incredible job. Period. He's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the National Football League over the last 5 years. He's a future Hall of Famer for sure. You don't, those things don't come around very often. So to just say, hey, we're done with that guy. He's causing too much of a problem. He's asking for too much or this or that. And
he's just asking to be hit less, which that's what started this whole thing, which makes sense.
Here, at the end of the day, Zach, here's to go back to the football part of it, and to go back to the contract part of it. It's almost impossible for it to happen. He has a no trade contract clause that says the franchise cannot trade him without his approval.
He's approved 4 teams, though.
He's approved 4 teams. Maybe, if they come up with the right terms. Neither one of those teams are going to come up with the right terms to get Russell Wilson. It's not going to happen, and Seattle's not going to accept anything they give in return. You have to think who's going to be a quarterback that would come in to replace that. There's nothing on the market that Seahawks can get equal value for. And if you're talking about first round picks, that's so ridiculous because the Seahawks don't do first round picks.
No, they don't.
And if they do, they don't do them very well.
No, they haven't. But they do master those 5th round picks.
They're really good at that.
Will Disley.
Russell Wilson.
True.
Richard Sherman. Doug Baldwin. Jermaine Kearse. These are all guys that came.
Michael Dixon.
Well, he was
a 5th round pick.
To draft a kicker in any round is freaking good. And he's a superstar. He's a superstar kicker.
True. Yeah. Again, Terry, I'd say I understand the football aspect of it. I actually think that because we're getting very football-y, but Carson Wentz was an unmovable QB, and they made it happen.
I would a young kid that was really pretty good.
And he's 7 years younger than Russell Wilson, and arguably will be a future Hall of Famer himself. Russell's 32, but as a Seahawks fan, be okay with Tua playing. Yes, but only if Russell is down for the game. I think that it's Seattle's soul that they would lose a lot more than a quarterback. I think that they would be okay on the field. It's just that's sad to me to see anybody really like turn on him. To turn on him from a football standpoint is fine. Like, honest to God, if they got 5 first-round draft picks, which is an impossible trade, no one has that to offer. They'd be like, yes, goodbye, bye. You got to go. But to say that he's not worth what they've paid him or whatever is sort of upsetting. And I don't live in Seattle anymore, but I lived there for a good deal of time. And he was like the one pure entity of that entire city the entire time that I lived there. And that would be the saddest part. Like, I'm trying to think, like, he would probably take out a full page ad in the Seattle Times giving a heartfelt thanks. And to be honest, even I can't think of another athlete that has been that good and that kind to a city in Seattle's history. And that would be a sad thing. People bring up Steve Largent. Yeah, to somewhat of a degree.
He wasn't he was Russell Wilson is.
He wasn't. Ken Griffey bolted for fucking Cincinnati. So that's how bad he wanted to get it. Cincinnati, the worst chili recipe you could possibly imagine. So yeah, that would be, I think, the more upsetting part for me is that nobody likes each other in Seattle. Like, it's a tough place, but everybody likes Russell.
They do. And again, I'll say this, and we can end it with that. It was like, man, there's so much that we have taken for granted over the course of the last 6, 7, 8, 9 years. Dating back to 2013, I guess, when this whole thing really kind of started rolling for Seattle. But just how it feels having that type of team led by that type of guy, and it gave people stuff to be excited about every single week. I don't think there was this kind of excitement before, the Russell Wilson, Pete Carroll, this whole era was put together, and we lost pieces of it over the years when we lost the LOB, when we lost Marshawn. And I think, the last, vestige of that is Russell Wilson, and he's the face of the franchise. And I think people would miss that. I think people would miss that excitement because it wouldn't. I really just don't believe it would be as pure and as exciting as it is right now.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with that. Like, love him. He is a thrilling player. Yeah. And a durable player.
He hasn't missed a game from an injury for sure.
True. All right, Terry. You have yourself a good weekend.
Yep, you too, man.
All right. Talk to you again on Tuesday. Thank you, everybody. Patreon.com/BurnsNola. Share this as much as you can. Find us wherever podcasts are if you want to find any of our back episodes. And we'll talk to you again.